Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. Here we go again, beginning of a new week. This is the live stream that I do every Monday where we talk about entrepreneurship and side hustles, as the name implies. And it's particularly an alternative to being an employee for your entire life. I think this stuff is absolutely amazing. It's been a big part of my life, and I've mentored a lot of people and assisted a lot of startups and small business in my time. And I think it's absolutely awesome because not only can you use this to take your career in different directions, but it can supplement your career. And that's the whole side hustle thing. So that's what we're here to talk about. The title of this episode is How to Start. It's a live Q&A. This is episode number 93. So we are going to launch into that. We're going to answer some questions. This is primarily a Q&A. So if you can see my beautiful face, you should be able to see a chat box or a text, a chat field, whatever you want to call it, somewhere in the vicinity of my face. Get in the chat and ask me some questions. If you have been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to do this. And I'm basically going to answer your questions. Yeah, and as always, the live challenge for everyone here is to put into the chat what you think is a cool side hustle idea. I would like to challenge everyone with that and see what you guys come up with. And we can talk about them if you'd like. The word of the day is mamma jamma. I have no idea what it means, but if you do, let me know. I think it's an American thing, but more on that later. Okay, as always, a shout out goes out to everybody. You guys know who you are. My YouTube channel members. Membership has its privileges. Also to my Patreons, to my super thanks donors. Those are awesome to get. And to you, my participants. Thank you for being here. Okay, I see we got 14 people here. Let's get started. I'm going to kick this off. And what I did was I made a short list of 4 ideas that are ideas for you if you are looking to start a side hustle or you are looking to start your own business if you want to take the plunge and, just start the whole business outright rather than doing it on the side. Either or, it's fine. Now, are these things the be all end all? No. Are they the thing that you should always do? No. Do they work in every situation? No, but they're damn useful and they can really stimulate a lot of ideas for you to figure out what you want to do and what's the best way forward for you. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with something that I've talked about many times just to sort of get us rolling here. This is the idea. It technically falls under the topic of operations. Okay. So whether you are wanting to start a side hustle or a business that does services or product sales, either or, okay? This applies to both. And the idea is that you're going to be doing pre-sales, okay? Just like when you order something off Amazon or off the internet, the way it usually works is you pay upfront as the customer, and then the company, then after they receive your payment, then they deliver whatever it is, whether it's a service or it's a product, they then deliver it afterwards, right? If it's a product, it's very easy to visualize. You order something off Amazon or something like that, you pay up front, they transfer the funds, and then within the next couple of days, they create a package for you. They take products off the shelf, they put it in the package, and then they send it to you. And then you receive it later, maybe a couple of weeks later, a couple of days later, whatever it is. So the idea is the customer has paid upfront before they've received anything. That's the idea. Now, if you do this for your business or your side hustle, the big advantage, of course, is that you don't have to shell out a lot of cash initially to fund whatever it is you're doing. So in the case of product sales, normally you'd have to pay for inventory and all this kind of thing, right? In this case, if you're doing pre-sales, what you do is you get the money up front before you've created a product for a customer or client, right? So the idea is that you then receive the money, you can then pay for inventory or pay for whatever expenses you have, per unit costs, and then that assists in lowering the amount of initial capital you need to get your business off the ground. Okay. In the case of services, this helps too. It's a little more abstract because we're not talking about products, but you get the money up front and then you provide the service, right? So what that does is it makes the initial capital outlay of the business a lot lower, right? Okay. So that's something I've talked about before. That's not a great secret. That's something that you can do and that will help you get this off the ground for less money. That's the idea. The second thing I want to throw out there, whoops, as I smack my microphone around well, I don't want to say what it's like, but the next thing I want to talk about, the next two things I actually want to talk about, they're not about operations, they're about market research. They're on the marketing side. Okay? Hopefully everybody knows, if you're just starting out, marketing means the scientific study of customers and potential customers. That's what marketing is, right? So if you want to learn who you're going to sell to, okay, that's probably a big question, right? Who are these people? How to reach them? What you should communicate to them to convince them to do business with you. Okay, all of that stuff, that's marketing, right? So on the marketing side of things, I'm going to introduce two ideas. Here's the first one. Okay, probably a lot of conventional advice that you've heard, or you may have heard if you've looked into this, is to do market research, right? So you try and find out, who would buy a certain product or service, and those other things I said, like how would you reach those people if you wanted to tell them that you're here and that you're offering this and they should buy it from you, and how best to communicate to them to convince them to do business with you, right? If you're wondering that, okay. The conventional wisdom is you do market research, which when you get into it, it kind of involves a lot of very mundane things like customer surveys, giving people questionnaires and stuff like this. And I don't advocate that. I think that there's a lot of problems with that in practice. So this is what I'm going to suggest as an alternative for that. If you want to figure out what can you do and who should you sell to and how to reach those people and what to say, either in terms of a message or pictures or like any form of communication that will convince people to buy from you, right? This is what I'd say. Go and look at existing companies, okay? What do they offer? Who are they selling to? How are they doing the selling? Like, what's their marketing message? And how are they communicating with their target market? Like, what channel are they going over? Is this on the internet? Is this in terms of flyers? Is it in terms of ads, on the internet? Is it in terms of an email list? Is it in terms of word of mouth? Is it in terms of physically going to events like conventions and trade shows and things like that, and connecting with your potential customers that way? How are they doing it? And you can look at that and use it as a template for what you can try, okay? If you want to get into a certain business, look at existing businesses. This is one reason of many reasons why people start up things like construction companies, right? That go and build houses and things. It's very easy to set up because all you have to do is you have to look at what existing people are doing. If you want to be a plumber and maybe you know how to do plumbing or something, you want to start a plumbing business, it's not that hard to find out how to go about doing that, because you can just look at all the plumbing companies around you. You can see what services they provide, what they do, how much they charge. And then if you do some research into it, you can see who are they selling to, how are they going about doing that, right? And you can basically copy all of that. So if they do it a certain way, you do it exactly the same way in the beginning, right? And what that'll do is it'll take some of the uncertainties of the marketing side out of the equation for you, okay? Because you already know there's a market. You know that, they can be convinced by saying something like this to them. You know that they're looking in these places because that's how the other plumbing companies are advertising to them, right? So it can make a good template to get you started, okay? So that's what I'd say about market research, that rather than worrying about surveys and this kind of stuff, I'd look at that, look at the template and see if you can replicate it, essentially. You can put your own spin on it if you wish, but essentially you're looking at replicating it. So that's what I'd put out there. That can stimulate ideas for what to do and how to do it. You're piggybacking off the efforts of somebody else. They're already showing you that this is what works, right? So you're taking full advantage of that. And in mature industries like the construction business and many others, these are known quantities. They're standard things that everybody needs, like plumbing. The public is educated on what a plumber is, why they would need it, why they should pay for it, that kind of stuff. And there are standard channels over which the customers and the suppliers go to connect with each other, right? So that can help stimulate ideas. Does this work in every industry? No. It works in mature industries where the public is educated or the market is educated on what this is and why they should need it, right? So that's the second principle I'd like to put forward. Okay, you replicate what you see other companies doing as a way to inform you. This is what I should do and how I should do it. Let's see what other things that I have here. Okay. A third principle here that I want to throw out there until we get questions, because we don't have any questions yet, is something very similar. I've talked about it several times on these live streams in the past. Okay, that's where you validate demand by, instead of doing research in the conventional sense, where you're going out and seeing, are there customers who say they're interested in this? No. You validate the demand for it and you validate your ability to sell, okay, by actually trying to sell, okay? Normally, when you talk about this in a conventional sense, in sort of business theory, the way it works is you would have like a certain operation that would be the validation of the business. You want to test to see if this business makes sense for you, if you can get it off the ground. And what that involves is, it doesn't involve selling. It involves all the research that goes before you set up the company. So looking up statistics about the economy, looking up, doing research on your market. Who are these people? Who would they want? Who are they that would want this product or service? Where are they? What types of people? How do I reach them? What do I say to them? You kind of do that in terms of like a very sterile kind of research project, right? What I'm saying is, instead of doing that, you accomplish the same goal by taking your best guess based on things we've already talked about, and then actually offering something for sale. So even though you haven't actually set up your company yet, you haven't produced any products or services, what you're doing is you're basically putting a message out there to your target market saying like, okay, I have this for sale. It costs this much. This is what it is. This is how it works. And if you want one, this is how you order. So you've set that up. And the idea is that if you get a response where people start to order your product through this message, it could be an ad or something like that, then that validates all of those things at once. It validates, this is your target market. This is how you reach them. This is how you convince them. This is the correct price to offer. And, and you validate all those things in one shot. And it's a much better validation because people are not just saying, oh yeah, I'm interested. They're not just saying that on a survey or something. They're actually putting their money where their mouth is, and they're actually ordering the product. That's the best possible validation that the product will generate sales. Okay, there is a demand for it. You can convince people that it is a good thing, and they will buy from you. Okay? Right? There's been, I've sat through many, many pitches for many people pitching entrepreneurial ideas in my time. And I remember doing this in university where I was the instructor and all the students were pitching various things. And a lot of the pitches were basically, they were selling the audience on the product. So for example, they would say, plumbing is a good thing to do. And they would give you some stats on the plumbing industry and how many billions of dollars it makes every year and stuff. And then they'd say, yes, this is something that, my idea is to do plumbing and therefore it's gonna work. And the problem is that, okay, the audience or the customer, potential customer, they agree with you. Plumbing is a good thing. Plumbing, is something I need. Plumbing is something I would pay for. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to buy it from you. I don't know who you are. I'm not necessarily convinced you can provide high quality plumbing services. Who are you? You're nobody. You've never done this before. So selling somebody on the industry is not the same thing as selling somebody on your product or service. So when you take this suggestion and you use a sort of a sales pitch as your product and market validation tool, right? It's a better validation because not only are they showing that, yes, they need plumbing services and, they're willing to pay for plumbing or whatever, but they're also saying, yes, I am prepared to buy from you, right? Which is a much better validation. So those are 3 of the 4 suggestions I have. Okay, we got some activity in the chat. The winner of the first person to get in the chat that wins a virtual handshake for me is Leonid. Leonid says, hi, Bill. Shall I read autobiographies of successful people to get ideas? Is it useful? It's useful up to a point. I actually prefer reading, like if you're going to read a book, I would say reading the true stories of actual people that have been successful at a business is probably the most useful type of book. That's as opposed to, ironically, kind of what I'm doing now, where I'm sort of giving advice, right? And saying this should work, this does work, that should work, right? Because the big question is, yes, those things may be valid some of the time. The question is, are they going to be valid for you in the way that you would apply them in your situation? And that's a big question mark, right? So, in fact, some conventional advice for how to do something may actually not be valid for you in your specific situation, So how do you know that? Well, you don't. You learn by doing, right? You learn by trying things. In terms of reading a book, probably the best example would be what you're proposing, Leonid. Here's the true story of someone who actually succeeded. This is how they did it, right? Now, there's some very obvious limits to this, right? A lot of people who write autobiographies, they're well known to exaggerate. They skip over a lot of relevant problems and issues where they were not correct. They tend to write down an idealized version of what happened instead of maybe the actual version of what happened. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of problems with it. And then the other thing, of course, is that just because that worked for someone else doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to work for you, right? One of the reasons for that is because, for example, you could read the story of like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, people like that. Now there's no doubting that these people did succeed beyond most people's wildest dreams. That's true. But when you actually look at what happened to them, and then you look at what happens to a typical entrepreneur, what you notice immediately is that these people that are writing the books, the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates, they're wild exceptions to the rule, right? Just because this happened to Steve Jobs doesn't necessarily mean if you try and do the same thing as Steve Jobs, you will succeed in the same way. Like these are wild outlying data points. Okay. So that's the danger, It can provide you with a real world, a real world account of what actually transpired for somebody. But is that a typical experience? No, a lot of the times it isn't. So that's the other danger that you run into. It's almost like saying, I want to make it in the music business. How does one do that? And then they read a book about the Beatles, the most successful artist of all time. And they go, okay, well, I'll just do the same thing as them and I will expect the same results. And it's like, no, that does not happen very often. In fact, that happens like the odds of winning the lottery are more likely than, this happening to you the way it played out for the Beatles. You know what I mean? So that's the danger of that. So just read it with that in mind. It might be useful. What I would suggest instead is get a bit of information, get a bit of knowledge, and then start trying stuff. Like try things on a very small scale. Doesn't take much money, doesn't take much effort, but you try things. You kind of move out of your comfort zone. You actually try things, and the more things you try, the more experience you get, the more the more wisdom you have, and the more ability you have. So that's what I'd recommend. But great question, Leonid. Alex says, "Yo, what's up?" Right on. Well, I don't know, how do I respond? Don't you say sup, right? That's what I said. At least you would maybe 20 years ago. Anyway, Alex says, "So glad to see you again, my brother." Yes, you and me, we're like that, right? We go right back to the good old days. So that's good. Side hustles, go. Yeah, Alex, if you want to do a side hustle, let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Get into all the details. It's fascinating stuff. Not only is this a way to supplement your income in a conventional career, okay? That's one thing. Not only also is it a way for you to be your own boss, to take your career in your own hands, so you're not dependent on an employer who can lay you off or treat you like crap, right? That's the second thing. But also, it's a great creative outlet. If you have your own ideas of how this world could be improved, if you can provide value to people, provide a better version of something in some way to some people, right? This is a chance for you to implement your creative vision on how to do that. You got your own ideas? Now's your big chance. You can put them into practice. And if you're correct and you do provide something of value, it directly pays off in terms of financial remuneration. That's the thing. The other element, and I guess this is number 4, is unlike in maybe a day job where sometimes you end up doing things that they're totally unsatisfying. You feel like, what good am I doing? This is absolutely pointless. I'm doing absolutely no good. I'm not making a mark on the world at all. I'm not even doing anything meaningful. This is completely pointless. You can escape that feeling. You can do something where you choose what you're doing, and you do it because you feel it's worth doing. And if you feel that you could have more of an impact doing something else, then you can do that something else. So it's great, absolutely great thing. Okay, get in the chat. There are 23 people here. I'm going to resume with my point number 4 of 4 to try and get this conversation going. And the last point I have of my 4 points I wanted to share with you guys to give you ideas is how to know what to do, how to know who's out there that might be looking for something, in terms of a customer or potential customer, how to know what to give them that they would pay for, that they would think is awesome, right? In order to know that, you need to network with your customers. You need to get together with them. You need to be in the same room as these people, ideally. Okay, you can do stuff online, but what would be really cool is if you could have a conversation face to face with your customers or potential customers and find out, like, what do they think? What's their perceptions? What do they think is useful versus what do they think is not so useful? Doesn't always follow the same logic that you might have. They might have certain perceptions of things. Maybe those perceptions are out to lunch, but yeah, that's what they think. So if you're trying to sell to them, it's good to know, are they into this or are they into that? Or do they care more about this or do they care more about that? Right? Very important. For example, do people care more about, in a specific situation, about the price or having the thing you provide to be better quality? Right? Maybe you believe that, they will pay for better quality. Right? That's a belief you have because you've seen what else is going on around out there, and you think like, well, people are doing a crappy job. Maybe if I offered something better, people would pay for it. But does that hold up? Well, you could save yourself a lot of effort instead of just trying it and see, and then realizing that, people actually, they say they want quality, but when it comes down to it, they don't want the price to go up at all, even if it's to pay for better quality, right? You could save yourself all the trial and error by just meeting some of these people and asking them questions, having a conversation, how they think, So whatever you do, try and get into the same room if possible with your potential customers and get to know them and, get to see how they think and how they perceive things. And that will really, really inform you what to do and what's going to work. Okay, so those are the 4 things that I would put out there. Just to sum up, pre-sales, okay, so cash up front, then you provide later. That helps you with financing your operation. Market research, okay, validate the demand in terms of offering something for sale and then seeing if people actually buy it. That validates the entire chain of things that you need to have in place. Also market research, if you want to know kind of what to do and maybe how to go about doing it, look at existing companies in that space. Look what they're doing. You could copy their entire thing exactly if you wanted to, or bits of it. By definition, you are going to put your own spin on it just by the virtue of the fact that it's you doing it and not them. Okay, so it will be slightly different, even if you're really shooting for like a direct copy. And then finally, network with your potential customers. Get to understand them, get to have conversations with them, pitch ideas to them, see what they think. Would you go for this? Would you not? Why not? Like, why is that? Get to know how they think and how they see things. And that will be the tools for success. Okay, that's my monologue over. There's 23 people here. Get in the chat. It's up to you guys now. Ask me some questions. Let's explore some of this stuff. What are you struggling with? What are you looking to do? And I will help you out. If I get a lot of questions, we'll do this for longer. If I don't get any questions, I'll wrap it up in short order. Oh, and by the way, check out that course. If you want to learn business, check this out. Best bang for the buck. That will teach you business. That'll teach you everything that you would learn in a Master's of Business Administration degree, MBA at a university. It's actually a program, not a course, because there's multiple courses within it. And best bang for the buck ever, because you're using the same source material as they do in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA programs. You're getting the same textbooks. You're reading the same material. Now, if you get this course, one of the benefits is that it's entirely flexible. You can do it on your own schedule. You can do it whenever you feel like it. You can go really deep if that's what you're looking to do, or you could just get a sort of cursory overview of everything if that's more what your goals are. So it's entirely flexible. It's self-study. and you get the textbooks, and I provide you with several videos. I guide you through the whole thing. So check that out if you're looking to learn business. Then I created that in large part for aspiring entrepreneurs. So like here's access to all the theory and everything that you would learn in business school. Take that and incorporate it into what you do. Okay, great. Some people are in the chat. So Tech Savvy says, what are the best ways to get clients for your side hustle? Well, I just sort of talked all about that, really, in terms of like how to validate your idea, how to determine what your target market is, right? First of all, I said, look at what companies are out there. If you're wanting to do something similar, look at people that are already in that space and look at what they're doing. Who are they selling to? How are they selling? What channels are they going over? And what message are they putting out there that's convincing their potential customers to do business with them? You can use all of that as a template to get you started. Okay. That's the easiest way to do that. And that's assuming, of course, you're doing something that other people are also doing, which is a lot easier to do than doing something original, okay? Like something totally different, right? You can do the totally different thing, but that actually turns into one of the biggest challenges in all of business, where you're offering something new that no one's ever heard of. Nobody knows why they might want that. Nobody understands how it works. Nobody even really understands why that's something they should pay for, you have to doing a lot of educating of your potential customers, right? As opposed to something that's already out there, you're just doing it like the example I used earlier was the plumbing company. You're offering plumbing services, right? Now, the advantage is the people who need plumbing services already know what that is. They already know that they need this. They already know that, yes, I should pay for it. They already are sold on the entire idea, and there's standard channels to go over to connect plumbing companies to people who need plumbing services. You know what I mean? That's all in place for you. All you have to do is now do what every other plumbing company is doing. You advertise in the same place, you go to the same customers, you get listed in the same directories and things like this. You know what I mean? When you go on social networking, you kind of do similar things and you get into the same groups as them, right? So, you know what I'm saying? Like I already covered kind of some of that stuff, but hopefully that makes sense. Null Logic says, just wanted to say thank you for doing what you're doing. It's good and solid knowledge that you share with people. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm just genuinely enthusiastic about the whole topic. I think it's awesome on multiple levels. I encourage people to think like this for a whole kaleidoscope of reasons. Even if you're working like as an employee in a company, this type of thinking will further your career. If you understand what's important to the company, like, they make money by doing all these little things, these are all important to them because it's the tools for how they make money. And if you come up with new and better ways of doing those things or alternate ways, that they don't necessarily outperform, but they give you the same results doing a different thing, which provides security and redundancy and flexibility. You know what I mean? Not only is it good for your career, people will promote you and, allow you to go and shine and give you decision-making authority, but, it empowers you. You understand how to make money directly without needing an employer. Now, if you do that within an employer, they'll reward you for that. But you also have the option of going outside of the employer and just being on your own. It's a win on so many levels, But thank you, Null Logic. That's very kind of you to say. Guido says, do you think it's worth it to put your name persona behind a product as soon as possible? Is staying semi-anonymous initially detrimental? Specifically talking about things like software as a service. There is no like yes or no answer that's universal for that. But what I would do is I would think very hard about the incentives for you wanting to obfuscate yourself and not sort of say who you are and all this kind of stuff. Like, sometimes it's legitimate. Like, for example, when you go on the internet, you have to protect yourself. There's people that are trying to do identity theft. There's people that are trying to scam you or take you for a ride, or, like almost like that thing where they do where they hire a legitimate company to do something, but it's fraudulent. What they're trying to do is they're trying to entrap you so that they can sue you and make money off you that way. Right? Or threaten to sue you and trust that, you will not want to go to court. So, they say, well, you could pay me and I'll go away and I won't sue you, like that kind of blackmail. Like you have to protect yourself online to a degree, right? But there's a difference between sort of like, due diligence, just safety, basic safety steps, and totally hiding everything. Like, I'm not going to put a physical address. I'm not going to put a name. I don't want any part of this to ever get traced back to me. Like, you can easily go too far. And if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, like, you're not wanting to be upfront with customers about stuff, and, you're not really wanting to stand behind what you do, then I would question that. I would examine that. You can maybe sort of try and rationalize where you stand on that stuff by doing business in the real world as opposed to doing business virtually. If you're dealing with people in the real world, like face to face or over the phone or something, that's perhaps a little bit better than dealing with somebody halfway around the world in another country virtually. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be a balance, and everybody has to get that right. But if you do things properly, then you shouldn't fear doing the basics of identifying who you are and putting your name on it. You know what I mean? Like software as a service. I mean, I was in the IT industry like 25 years ago, so I mean everything I know is pretty much obsolete. But you're doing business virtually. You're selling possibly to people halfway around the world. They're in a different country, so the laws are different. The laws of your country don't apply to them, and vice versa. So that brings in some complications. You know what I mean? But you do the due diligence things to protect yourself, and then it shouldn't be a big issue. But I'm not an advocate of saying like just obfuscate everything. Like don't put your name, don't put your address, don't put anything on anything, because that also shoots you in the foot in terms of being able to convince someone to trust you enough to pay you, right? It isn't just a matter of saying, "Hey, I do this, buy it from me." A lot of people won't buy, not because they don't need it, not because they can't afford it, but because they don't know who you are. They don't trust you. Yeah, I need it. And yeah, I have the money to spend, but I'm not convinced that giving you my money is going to be the best thing for me. I don't know who you are. And it looks like you're hiding everything. Okay, Tech Savvy says, do you recommend getting liability insurance before starting a side hustle? Absolutely not. No, I don't recommend spending any money on preventative things before you even know that this is going to be something you're going to do, right? Because why stop there? Why not get like an accountant to do your taxes? Why don't you incorporate, and do all that? Why not patent your idea? Like you could go the whole 9 yards and putting all that stuff into place. And then after you've spent a small fortune and it's taken you 9 months, then you discover that you can't make a single sale and the whole thing ends. And you've just blown through a bunch of money. You've learned nothing about how to start a business, and you've made, not only have you haven't made any money, you've like burned through several $1,000s doing this. And it all came to naught. So that's not what I would recommend. I would recommend validating the business first. See if you can make sales. and see if you can make enough sales that this makes sense to pursue. And if the answer is yes, then you can start putting all the pieces into place as you go, as you invest more and this becomes like a big thing you're going to do. The other thing I've seen time and time again, by the way, tech savvy, is I've worked with a lot of startup founders, and a lot of times they will apply for grants from the government to give them money, or they'll try and impress angel investors and things like this to get money also. And what do they do with the money? They do all the easy stuff. They rent an office, they get, a website, they patent their idea, they get an accountant, they get a lawyer, they register their company name, they design a logo, they get business cards, blah, 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 blah. They do all this stuff, but yet, after they burn through all this cash, doing all this work, they then discover they can't get a single customer. And then the whole thing implodes. And it would have been better for them to not do any of this, because at least they wouldn't be in debt now. You've taken somebody's money, whether it's the government's or an investor's money or your own, and you've just burnt it. And you've got nothing to show for it, right? So the first thing I would do is I'd validate an idea. And the way entrepreneurship works is, a really good idea that actually you can execute and get off the ground and make you money is not this easy thing that you can think of 10 of them, like, just off the top of your head. You can't. You normally the pattern is you try several things and most of them will fail until you stumble upon something that does work, right? Now, if every time it took you to try an idea, it took you all this work, you have to get insurance, you have to get an accountant, you have to get a lawyer, you have to get a website, you have to get an office, you have to get business cards, you have to get incorporated, you have to get, you file your own taxes, you have to get a patent, blah, blah, blah. If every time you try an idea, you got to do all this work and spend all that money, you'll never succeed. Because one, maybe two of those, and you're done. You're done for life. You know what I mean? What would be better is you try an idea, it fails, but it's cost you $100 to try that idea. It took you 6 weeks to try that idea, and now you're ready to try something else. Right? You could do that 6 times in a row, 8 times in a row, until bam, you stumble upon something that's like gold. You put this thing out there and all of a sudden everybody wants to buy it. And you can actually deliver it for that price. You know what I mean? So that's why I say what I do. That's why I don't recommend putting all the preventative stuff, all the services, all the, bureaucracy in place first. That comes later. Right? And the other thing about that stuff is that you can throw money at it. Right? You want an accountant, you want a lawyer, you want a patent, you want insurance, you want like all that. You can pay people to do it all for you. You know what I mean? And when you have money coming in, you can do it. And it's not that much of an issue. Guido says, main argument for it would be avoiding a connection to the main job identity. Theft is obviously an issue, but not that hard to mitigate, like you said. Yeah, okay. Well, like if that's what you're doing, great. I can certainly understand that. The other thing is that we all have a bit of a spotlight effect. So if you do something on a little corner of the internet that doesn't really have anything to do with your day job, the fact that the person doing that has your name, is that going to like all of a sudden send off alarm bells to your boss? Having done kind of that sort of stuff before in my life and seen other people do it, that's the conclusion I've sort of come to. It's like, it's a bit of the spotlight effect. We're honestly not that important. I mean, unless somebody is there somebody sleuthing you to see what you're doing? Or are you releasing a product that's exactly the same as what you're doing in your day job. You know what I mean? Like then, okay, I could see maybe somebody discovering it, you know? But if you've got a job as a plumber and that's what you do, you work for Plumbing Services Incorporated or something, but on the side, you're writing software in your basement and you're starting a little software company, you know, and you put your name on that company and your name on the plumbing thing. Are the plumbers going to be sleuthing the internet, looking for anything that you do constantly? You know what I mean? Like, it might be, like, I understand that there's risk involved, but I think it's more of a hypothetical risk. And if you haven't made any money doing it, you know, is it a threat to them? You know, it's like if they call you to the office and you say, hey, look, you know, I just thought I could write software. I've gotten zero traction with this. It's just something I put up a website and nothing has come of it, you know. So, I mean, that's up to you to decide. I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't do it, but it's just that if you're going to obfuscate your entire identity to do a like some kind of startup, that can be a real hindrance, because would you buy something from someone that, like, you don't know them, and then when you investigated them, it turns out they're trying to obfuscate who they are. They have no address, no name, nothing, right? Is that, like, that's going to be a hindrance, right? So it's up to you. I'll let you figure that one out, how you would do it that's right for you. Leonid says, hey, I talk to founders and entrepreneurs and looks like all of them are extroverted and like to talk a lot. Any tips for an introvert like me? I'm an introvert. I do talk because I can, but trust me, I'm an introvert. I've been my entire life. And the thing about, like, well, if you were here at the beginning of the chat, I introduced 4 points to kind of get the discussion going, 4 recommendations I have. And one of them was this idea that you need to network with your target market, with your potential customers. You need to ideally be able to have a face-to-face conversation with some of them and get to understand who they are, what their opinions are, how they see things, what their perception is, right? Because your success is directly proportional to how well you understand your target market. Okay, how will you understand your potential customers? The people who really understand how they think, they can predict, they'll go for this, but they won't go for that. Like, the people that can do that accurately, they're the ones that clean up, right? So it's no coincidence that a lot of, you know, founders and stuff, like, as you say, that you've met are extroverted, because that's definitely a piece of the puzzle. Business is not about you. Business is about you giving other people what they want and convincing them to buy your thing. It involves other people. It's about other people. You're not doing this as some kind of, you know, research project for yourself, some personal goal where you are doing this for your own interest. You know, I want to write an app and I want to sell it. It's like, no, that's not what this is. That's what's called a research project. And you can do that without any of this headache. You can go and do whatever it is. It doesn't matter if no one else in the world cares about what you're doing, right? They don't have to. But business it's for other people. It's to get customers. It's to make money. So you do that by giving people what they want, what they're looking for, what adds value to them. That's what convinces them to pay for it, right? So if you don't have an understanding or awareness of who your customers are and how they think, it's very hard to succeed at this, you know? But I got news for you. You don't have to be an extrovert to be able to communicate with people. You know what I mean? You really don't. You know, I mean, don't take my word for that. Go see real world examples. There's a lot of introverts that you know of because they're out there, you know? They have a lot of influence and a lot of pull. Some of them are famous, you know? You know what I'm saying? You can do the communication on your own terms, right? And in my experience, pure introverts are kind of rare. It's like everybody's sort of on like a continuum. You know, pure extroverts at one end, pure introverts at the other. Everyone's kind of somewhere in between. Some people are more towards the introverted side. Other people are more towards the extroverted side. You know what I mean? Consider this dear one. Love and enjoy your content. Looking forward to purchasing your business program. Well, thank you very much. That's great to hear. Thank you for saying so. Also, consider this dear one. It's great to have you here. If you're looking for that business course, it's that thing right there. Link in the description. Nevs, if I'm pronouncing that properly, accent on the fs, says, how to deal with bad competitors that sell items at very low, absurd prices like their profits are close to none. My sales and everyone's sales went low because of them. There's many ways to deal with that. First of all, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what business is all about. If you can offer something of value for less money, there's usually a type of customer that goes for that. They want to minimize the price, right? And they will accept even a reduction in quality if it means that the price goes down, right? There are other customers that don't think like that. They think the opposite. They think quality is what I want, and I don't mind paying if I'm getting quality, right? Now, they've done many, many studies on this topic, this very topic, with data over decades, okay? Starting in the 1960s, they were amassing data on this. And the bottom line was that they found that businesses that focus on quality are the ones that tend to be more financially successful, okay? Now, there's some caveats, though. It has to be quality as perceived by the customer. So it's not some, when I say quality, it's not some like abstract thing that, this product more closely meets the specification than the competitor's product. It's like, no, this is a different type of quality. This is the quality in the minds of the customers, what they regard as a better product or not. That's the definition. Their perception of the quality, right? Now, sometimes that's based on something real, like this product is better in some way. It lasts longer, or it performs better, or it's more efficient, or it's more resilient, it's more reliable. It performs the same, it has the same efficiency, but you can kick it around, you can get dust in it, and you can leave it in the sun for 3 days and it will still work flawlessly, right? You know what I'm saying? The quality has to be the perception of the customer. And sometimes it's based on real quality, right? That you would think of as quality. Other times it's based on marketing perception, right? Like, Apple has consistently got its customers to pay a huge premium to buy its products as opposed to any other competing products. Like, instead of getting an iPhone instead of getting a Samsung phone or something like that. Does that mean the iPhone is always like 2 or 3 times the quality of the Samsung phone? There's a lot of people that would argue that's not the case, and it's all just Apple's marketing campaign. They're making their products so much cooler, and all, like, it's so much more desirable on an intellectual level. So the customers believe that it's better quality, right? Without it actually being that much more superior. You could argue this whichever way, but the point is the customers have to believe that it's better, right? So what they found was that is the best metric of who is going to clean up financially, right? The companies that can provide the best perceived quality are the ones that will really clean up, right? Because what you can do then is you could keep your prices the same, and then you could sell much more quantity, right? And make bigger profits that way. Or you could raise your prices and sell the same quantity as your competitors, only you have a larger profit margin, right? So whichever way you slice it, you're going to come out on top if you have the best quality, right? But that specific definition of quality. Okay. Generally, for a startup or a small business, it's bad to compete on price because you will never be able to compete on price with your competitors if your competitors are big. They will have economies of scale and you won't. So you'll always be at a disadvantage. So instead of competing on price, you compete on other things. Quality is one. You could focus on a particular type of customer. That's another, right? There are other ways of doing it that don't involve competing on price. And also, it's not something that you really want to do, even if you could necessarily, based on the principle I just mentioned. Because, that's great if you're Walmart and a handful of others, but those are wild exceptions. Most other companies that try and compete on price, they don't come out on top. It's called the race to the bottom, right? Where their profit margins are so small that it's hard to justify being in that business. Guido says, fair enough, good points. I just like the anonymous work gives you more freedom to try some totally niche stuff without a connection to your professional profile. Okay, sure, yeah, you can try stuff, but remember, I'm talking about business. I'm not talking about research projects, okay? Now, if you don't really care about trying to sell it, that's not what's important to you. You've got other goals, like, can I write an app that does this? Like, I don't care about trying to sell it. I just want to do this. Can I do this thing? Like just for myself. Yes, that's totally fine. But in terms of selling, all things being equal, the more you obfuscate, the less trust you will have with customers, which means it's harder to sell. So that's the point. The force is kind of pushing back against the whole like obfuscation thing. As long as you're aware of that, that's all I'm saying. Okay, and there we go. That's the end of the chat. Okay, we've been doing this an hour. There's 23 people here. Check out that course. Okay, if you want to learn business, if you want the tools to understand all these principles and really frame what you can do. Experience is important too. But you need both. You need the theory and you need the experience. And it's people that have both that really kick ass at this. So if you're looking for the knowledge, check out that course. Best bang for the buck anywhere. If anybody has any more questions, get in the chat, ask them now. Otherwise, I'll be winding this down. I just want to say, like, startups and entrepreneurship are awesome. Even side hustles. I think side hustles are an awesome thing. They're a great way to sort of put your toe in the water of this world without taking massive risks, without quitting your day job. This is something you do on the side, and if you're working full-time or you're in school full-time, if you're younger, you're in university or whatever, you're trade school, whatever you're doing, and you're wondering like, well, where can I find time to do all this stuff? That's the catch, right? I much prefer people to keep their day job or stay in school, do whatever it is you do, keep that going, and then add this stuff as a side project, like a side hustle, and understanding that you might not have as much time and effort to deal with it, but I'd still prefer that than quitting your day job or quitting school, dropping out of school, and just doing this full time. Because usually the way this works is, you got to try a few things first, build up some experience, and then, you hit the jackpot. You find something that has a lot of potential. And then if you are equipped, if you have the knowledge and the experience, then you can take it to the next level. And the goal, I think, for a lot of people will be to replace their income and then keep going. So you're making the same amount of money that you'd make in your day job, but then the sky's the limit. There's no ceiling for you. If you can, refine what you're doing and improve things and scale up, then you can keep going. You can make more than you would have in a day job. I think it's a great opportunity. I've done this myself, and I think that's what I'm doing these days with, being a consultant and stuff, and then doing YouTube on the side. It's just, you do entirely what you feel like doing. and I recommend it to others. Flank Sinatra says, hello. I was always curious, do stores have a very big profit margin to the products they sell? Obviously, manufacturers compensate with large volumes. Sorry if the question is a bit unrelated. It was a personal curiosity. Well, you're saying manufacturers compensate with high volumes. Like, first of all, no, none of that's true. All the time. You get some manufacturers that manufacture things at high volumes. And yes, you get that volume manufacturing. You also get a lot of very niche manufacturing, right? Or to Americans, I think you pronounce it niche manufacturing. Excuse me. So you manufacture something maybe in low quantities, but it's highly complex and you sell it for a very high unit price. Okay, you can make just as much money, right? Now, stores, depending on what stores you're talking about, it varies wildly. If you're talking about consumer items, I don't have the details on that. You can easily look it up, like things like Walmart, like what margin do they make? Like the markup, the difference between their costs and their selling price, right? So like that margin. If I had to guess, I would say somewhere around 10% is kind of just a guess across the board for consumer products. For different types of manufacturing, like I come from industrial services, and in industrial manufacturing, they make stuff that costs a lot more on average. Like you're talking about building all kinds of equipment that runs society, runs the infrastructure. And all that stuff is very expensive. It's an order of magnitude above consumer products, right? So think of Boeing, like, manufacturing aircraft. That's maybe on the high end, and then there's a lot of stuff smaller than Boeing, but still much bigger than what consumers would buy, right? So the margins on that stuff go up considerably, right? So if it's maybe like 5 to 10% somewhere in there for like consumer products, maybe especially low price consumer products, you get things going up 30, 40% easily for industrial manufacturing. So if you're manufacturing locomotives, for example, I worked for a company many years ago. We manufactured locomotives, and you would sell the locomotives for like $2 million a piece. And, you're making a markup of like, 40, 50% on that. So the other thing is that you're also selling services to maintain and repair that product. So, you might not make as much on the initial manufacturing, but you're selling the whole thing as a package. So when you sell the maintenance and repair services, you're making a huge margin, maybe 70%, but you bundle them together, So there's all kinds of stuff, and it depends what industry you're in, but you can find that stuff out. You might even be able to just go to ChatGPT and say, like, in the United States or in whatever country, in this industry, for this type of product, for the manufacturers that make that, like shoes or whatever, what's the average markup, and see what it says. But great question there, Flank Sinatra. That's awesome. Okay, I think I'm going to wind this down. We got some great questions. You guys are awesome. Thanks for being here. I will be back in 1 week from today with another edition of Side Hustle Ideas. In the meantime, check out that course. You could do a lot worse by learning business. I don't care if you just want to have a conventional career and you want to get promoted and be more valuable to your company, or you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to work for yourself one day, you want to learn all the principles, or you just want to get some security, some financial security. So if you're laid off from a day job, you know how to make money on your own without an intermediary like an employer. You can go into business yourself, you know what to do, just some failovers, some financial security. It also gives you more options for what you do in your life. Learn business. Check out that course. I'll see you guys in a week for this. I'm going to be back in an hour today talking about job search. So if you care about that stuff, tune in later this afternoon. Thanks a bunch, everyone. You guys are awesome. I'll see you soon.